Recording in progress. All right, three, two, one, let's go. Hello, everyone. This is a new show called Locked Ones. It's first episode, Locked Ones as in localized ones. And it's going to be about subtitling, dubbing, and audio description. Yes, we kind of stole it from Hot Ones, that famous YouTube show where people, celebrities, eat chicken wings with hot sauce on it and cry and answer questions. And we don't want to do that kind of sadistic thing, maybe, probably, but it's gonna be fun. Now, I'm Max Diriagin, yours truly, chair of the International Association of Subtitlers called Subtle. I'm joined by my co-host Bill Skopilitis, which I think now he's there. He might teleport somewhere in post-production. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. And also our first ever guest, Scott McCarthy, who is vice president of dubbing at DreamWorks Animation. You know, a pretty famous place that birthed such gems as Shrek, Puss in Boots, I think, How to Train Your Dragon, and many other cool films that we all know. Scott, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. You didn't tell me this was the very first one. I feel added pressure
Uh,
now.
uh, yeah, well, that's on you now, on your shoulders. But to begin, could you tell us about yourself? Kind of guide us through your career from the very beginning and tell us what you're up to today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at DreamWorks for 20 years. 10 years of that, I was on the marketing side, doing everything from promotions, publicity, ran some consumer products programs, um, a lot of traditional marketing, and then the last 10 years have been in dubbing and localization. That's a whole nother probably podcast and story about how I made that leap. But I think the thing that I define my work in dubbing, or the way that I define my work in dubbing, is that I really pull from the marketing background that I have. I always tell our team not to think of ourselves as a dub team or a localization team, but think of ourselves as a branding team, kind of framed in that marketing or under that marketing umbrella, because what we're doing is really protecting the international brand of anything that we're localizing, whether it is one of those properties like Shrek or, How to Train Your Dragon or Trolls. So it's a huge responsibility, but I think that when we look at it through the lens of brand protection, it just takes it from something that typically was thought of as like a post-production element to just bringing that importance to what it is that we're doing.
Interesting. It's an interesting way to reframe it. Brand protection. So we can talk about this a little bit later. The first question I think I would like to do is a bit humorous, and that it goes as follows: dubbing or subtitling? Which one is better, and why is it subtitling?
Oh man, you okay? That's a trap question. So let's just start there. Okay, I got to try my best politician answer here on this one. I am overseeing a dubbing workflow. I actually don't do the subtitling myself on most of the work that we oversee. So I'm a little, maybe I'm a little biased here when it comes to dubbing. However, maybe I'll reframe subtitling as more general in terms of translations. Translations for me is the foundation of everything we do. So, which one I like better, I think that was the question. It's hard to say, but in terms of importance, I would start with translations because everything that happens, flows from that.
Right. Bill, do you have a favorite between the two, or maybe something else?
I do. I mean, my favorite is to not use anything at all if I can help it. To be honest with you, I mean, ideally but if you're watching something in a language you have no idea about, then I usually go with subtitles. If I'm watching a Japanese film or an anime or something like that, I usually go with subtitles. Having said that, there's some amazing dubbing work that has been going on lately, and especially since um, English speaking audiences are becoming more comfortable watching stuff like, Korean shows or European series, things like that. We see more and more people using subtitles.
Mm.
Um, then, I mean, it used to be like a niche thing, right? Up until a few years ago, especially in the US market, it wasn't so common. But nowadays, you have people using subtitles on YouTube and TikTok and mainstream, streamers everywhere, really. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a subtitler, so I'll have to go with
Yeah.
subtitling.
Well, and they're so connected today too. I mean, for me, just looking the way I consume, just English content that is not even dubbed, I always have the subtitles on. I don't know that trend. I feel like it kind of gained popularity in the pandemic. There's lots of reasons. For me as a parent, a lot of times the kids are in bed and I'm trying to like keep the volume down. I can't always hear what's going on the screen, and so I need like kind of both the audio and the visual aspect to kind of follow along. But I mean, it's a real trend where people have the subtitles up at the same time as they're hearing the same language being spoken.
Tell us about some of your favorite projects that you work for, or rather on.
Um, I think what comes to mind is one I did recently where, and it's actually something we've really been leaning into at DreamWorks recently, which is indigenous language dubbing.
Ah.
Um, we did a dub of Shrek into Maori, which is the indigenous language of New Zealand.
Nā vai koutou I haumai ki taku repo! Kia mihi a te kai. E mihi nā roto, ku pā wao tēnei. Ko te koro mō, mare kura.
Mohu au ki te mawhine. Uki huri reira.
And then I got to travel to New Zealand for the premiere of it. And just to experience what the work we do does for a culture, for a community, to sit in this screening with 1,000 Maori speakers and watching the entire movie of Shrek in a language I don't understand, but feeling what the audience and how and again, not understanding their reaction, but feeling their reaction and really experiencing what that dub meant to them. It's something I don't get to do a lot, and I need, honestly, it was a reminder that I need to get out there more to kind of really experience this work in that way, because it brought home the importance of what we do, especially when we're talking about indigenous languages, where you're trying to protect a language, you're trying to keep a language alive, you're trying to take a language and introduce it to a new generation, a younger generation. We just did another indigenous language dub for How to Train Your Dragon, the original animated movie. We partnered with Peacock, which is the streaming platform my parent company owns, and we put out a Cherokee dub in the Cherokee language of How to Train Your Dragon. And again, that responsibility that you feel in protecting a language and bringing it to a new generation and keeping a language alive and being just being a small part of that. I don't know, it really brought home the importance of this work. I think sometimes we get lost behind a desk or a computer screen, and we know this work is happening. We're partnering with what we know are great studios and translators and actors around the world, but sometimes we need those reminders of how this actually, of why this work matters. And for me, that New Zealand project in particular, being able to travel to the country and sit in that screening during the premiere, it just really brought home why I do this work. And so that has really stuck with me as far as a project that has been one of my favorites and one that will, define my career moving forward.
It is the best. It feels a little similar with activism when you do it, this union work, and then people come back to you and say thanks for doing that. Gives you a sense of purpose. Bill, do we have any meme to show to Scott? Something funny
Um,
we have
I
to
have a
show?
few. I mean, we're not gonna do a reaction video per se, but a few things have come up. First of all, I think this is pertinent to how US audiences used to perceive subtitles up until recently at least. Can you view it
Oh,
in the text chat?
this is in the chat. All right, one moment.
It's not mine, but I just thought it was pretty hilarious.
That's pretty good. You know what, for all the gifs that are, I always, first of all, I always feel like I say it wrong. Is it GIF or GIF? I never know. But of all the, this is actually a meme, I think. But I have not seen this one, and obviously there's a lot from Hayden Christensen, so this is pretty good.
Yeah, I also have one I made a while back about I think I was inspired by working on this animated movie. It was a kids movie, and we had to do the songs, obviously. And the dubbing team had first dips on how to, standardize all the key names and all the characters' names and stuff when we're localizing it. Because sometimes, they need to make things work for them, and we need to make things work for us. And then we do have people, getting into arguments sometimes or trying to explain because it's very similar what we do, dubbing
Yeah,
and
look,
subtitling. But
I I think this could be simplified just like subtitle translations versus dubbing translations. This is fantastic, and honestly, it speaks to something that frustrates me that happens not at my own company, but at honestly some of the biggest studios and streamers around the world, which is the dubbing and subtitling is often handled separately by two different teams, which I think this GIF is speaking to,
exactly,
and
yeah.
and you have these, and Squid Games got called out a lot on social media for the differences between those two. I wish there were more collaboration between subtitling and dubbing. Sometimes it's just not possible because of the timelines of when these things have to happen. You have a lot more flexibility if you're adapting something when it's final, it's in the can, it's something maybe a company's pulling out of their archives and they need to bring it to market. Some of the stuff that we're working on, we're dubbing it as it's rolling off a production pipeline, and so the speed at which we're required to kind of put this stuff out there, we don't have the luxury of kind of collaborating and in the sense of doing dubs and subtitle translations at the same time. But there should definitely be more, I don't know, feedback. There should be more visibility into what one side has done versus the other. There's always going to be limitations because of reading speeds versus that way things are adapted for dubbing and lip sync. But I think as a whole, the industry could use a lot more alignment, let's call it, between the translations we see in both formats.
Well said.
Definitely, yeah. I think, I mean, it's about education as well. Like, that's part of what we do at Saddle. We have people who work in dubbing as well, and I mean, we both have to benefit. We have a lot to learn from each other, and it's going to be mutually beneficial, first of all, and I think it's going to be to the advantage of the audience as well at the end of the day, learning each other's little quirks and limitations and on the way we do things. you know it's a win-win.
But this also speaks to the trend that we were talking about earlier as well of watching dubs or watching or listening to any content and having the subtitles on at the same time. That didn't used to be a thing. So maybe this was less of an issue, pre-pandemic or in years past, where you either watched the dubs or you watched the subtitles, and you didn't have the subs and the dubs in the same language on at the same time. This is a recent development in consumer habits, and so I think we need to pay more attention to it now as far as how we build these workflows inside of any kind of localization team. But I know we haven't caught up to that yet.
But kind of, right? We wanted to talk about market trends anyway. Anything other than lip sync and AI dubbing. What are you seeing as a marketing professional? What's going on and what's going to happen after that?
If I knew the answer to that question, I wish I knew the answer to that question. I it's tough. The industry I work primarily on the TV side of the business. Um, I mean, the TV industry is really hard right now. There's just, I guess you can even generalize this to talk about, features, television. It's everyone is risk averse is probably the best way to say it.
Mm.
And I think some of that is, effects coming off of the strikes that happened in the US with SAG-AFTRA. Some of it is tied to all the things happening with um, AI kind of impacting the market and people trying to figure out how that's gonna be utilized across all of these different workflows. Um, I think we are seeing impact still from the pandemic as far as where consumers go to get their content. Are they going to go to the theaters? Are they leaning onto platforms like Netflix and Amazon and Apple? Are they going to TikTok? Are they going to YouTube? Um, you know, Features, for example, you can't identify a trend. You have some movie that'll come out, it'll be a huge success, and everyone will say the movies are back. People are going back to the theater. With this film has saved the movie industry. And then the next movie that comes out, it followed the exact same formula, like down to the way the movie was made, down to the way it was marketed, and it falls on its face. And it's just like we can't, whether it's the feature business, the TV business, we can't identify trends anymore. And so all that means is the industry as a whole has become risk adverse, and we are not making a lot of new IP, and that's why we're in this era of just sequels. Everything is a sequel or an iteration of something that's already been done, or a remake of something. And it's just, and again, consumers are going to, I think, get to a point where they say enough is enough with the sequel era, and they're going to demand new IP. But that's a hard thing to balance with companies that are content creators not being able or willing to kind of take that risk. And DreamWorks is in the business of bringing new IP to a market. I mean, obviously we have Shrek 5 coming out, and we've just, released a remake of How to Train Your Dragon as a live action version. So we're going to lean into those things as well. But it makes it really hard for us to kind of launch new products, just given the nature of both the television and the feature industry. I'm proud of my company. We have released some new content, like Wild Robot was very successful for us, and obviously that's developed from a book, but again, it was the first time being brought to audiences on the screen. So I don't know, maybe that's a bad example because it was developed from something that existed, but it's just hard to bring new IP into the world right now. And I think that's something that I'm hoping consumers will get to a point where they demand that more from companies like mine, from Netflix, from Apple, from Sony, Warner Brothers, you name it.
Mm.
I loved the Wild Robot, by the way, personally. I loved it.
I wish I can take some credit for that as far as the localization, but that was done by Universal. They have a separate team that handles the theatrical distribution projects, and yeah, they did a fantastic job. So
No, yeah, it was great. The voice acting, the animation, everything about it, I really loved. Max,
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I noticed this risk aversity I've seen it for quite some time in anime. It's just season 6, 7, 8, and even if there is a new IP, it still feels somehow safe. It doesn't take risks. It just follows the formula, then they sell the merch and everything. And it feels like we're never gonna see these risky shows that we saw in the 90s and early 2000s again, where though they could just make negative money. They kind of succeeded, some of them, some failed. In Japan in the 80s, they had a lot of money. They could experiment. But today, everything is safe and a little bit bland because of that, mostly. Well, I think people will protest sooner or later and demand something fresh. It goes in
I'm
circles.
I believe in the consumer, and I think, like I said, same as you're saying, like they will demand that. And yeah, we'll see where that goes. But it's just there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and just the entertainment industry in general. Just do well with uncertainty. So
Yeah, we've been feeling a little bit of that ourselves, both
yeah,
with volumes and, series getting canceled after a single season. So, we definitely have a stake in this as subtitles ourselves. But we're also, like you said, consumers, viewers, cinephiles, fans. So, we can relate. It's not like we do this and then we don't watch anything or have no idea about what's going on in the industry. Most of us are really into this kind of thing. So, I think we're all on the same page there.
and I think a lot of something else we're seeing is that a lot of stuff now is being developed at a small screen, whether it's TikTok or YouTube, and then it's kind of making its way up through a Netflix into a theatrical release. And so we're seeing that development process start in a completely different place. And I think as an industry, we are still kind of adapting to kind of identifying those success stories when it comes to social media and YouTube, and then how to develop that for a market that gets their content on Netflix, or what's going to then drive them to go see that same IP brand in a movie theater. So yeah, I think that how shows are developed is also going to change, and we haven't fully adapted um, to that yet as well.
And I think just vertical content and short form content is like really on the rise. YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm not following that very closely, and I need to. And it's a world that it's not how I get my content, but I know it is picking up traction in a way where I need to be paying attention to it. Where do you guys see, obviously when it comes to streaming work, when it comes to features, the translation work, the subtitling work, there is a drop. Has any of that been offset when it comes to, say, YouTube, or it comes to some of these other, or is all of that type of work automated at this point?
Mostly.
Is there anyone that's saying like, yes, I need this translated, adapted, I need subtitles, but I want it done outside of this world of AI? Is anyone there in that space?
Some some big YouTubers actually go out of their way to translate and dub their stuff. I know a couple of examples. Mostly it's going to be either nothing or the automated stuff, either just from YouTube strictly or from some company that provides slightly better automated stuff. They don't have the budget. You understand how much it costs to dub something into 10 languages. Not happening. They don't have that
Yeah.
kind of money. But maybe in the
Yeah.
future, you press a button and you get a pretty decent something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this has come up when we talked about how to reach different clients and, just get with the times and replace some of the work that's not there anymore. Some people just flat out wouldn't work for, I don't know, Mr. Beast or whoever. But, it's good work if you can get it. Don't get me wrong. But some of our members, they have tried. But like Max was saying, I think 99% of it is either automated, low quality, super budget friendly and stuff, or just not there. But I think it's also a generational thing. Like I don't really watch a lot of that stuff either. Like I have a friend who just falls asleep with her phone falling on her face every night watching YouTube shorts. And I mean, we're the same age, but I just don't get it. I mean, I'm sure there's value to it, and every once in a while I'll
I
watch
also.
something that's really cool. And a comedian might get a series based on one of those shorts at some point. That's like you were saying, this is a thing now. You don't have to start at a comedy club. You can just have a YouTube channel, and then you might land a series in a big streamer.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've been trying, both as an association and as freelancers, we've been trying to get our piece of the pie, but it's not really working out at the moment.
It's
Well,
the volumes are down. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I think for me,
Yeah.
this kind of speaks to where again I draw from my marketing kind of brand background, which is, I think it's easy to for a YouTube creator to say, oh, I'm going to expand my reach if I just go into these languages, and you treat it like it's just this post-production element where you just click a box to say I need subtitles in languages X, Y, and Z. And I think we have to, and this comes to education, we have to make sure people understand it's not that simple, or you need to care maybe a little bit more about what that final outcome looks like. Obviously, you're not going to speak that language, but you need to get feedback. You need to get you need to have it properly QC'd, especially if you're going to lean into automation. You need to understand that if you care so much about your brand in the language that is the language you're putting the material out in, you should care that much about how it's received in anything you're going to, or any language you're going to adapt it into. And I think sometimes we put too much trust into these machines to say, well, I selected the language, it's there, it's out there, it's going to expand my reach now. But it actually could have an adverse effect, because it's going to turn people off, because when they see a bad quality as far as what they hear or what they see on screens with subtitles, they're not going to engage. And I think there's an educational component where we need to make sure people understand, when you're globalizing something, the attention you give to the international version should have just as much care as the domestic version you made.
Right.
100%.
And I wanted to ask you. You recently posted something very interesting on LinkedIn. I wanted to ask you about human agency in localization. Human in the loop, human in the lead. What is your view on that?
My view in some ways is, I don't know, I hate to say it, I feel like it's this train we can't stop. And so I don't like it, but at the same time, I think we have to recognize that this is happening. I think my challenge to AI companies was to say, we get it's going this direction, but we need to find a way to bring agency ownership for the people you're collaborating with, especially that was more focused on machine translation, post editing, and to say, I get it, that's where this is going in many respects, and it's not simple, and I'm not saying I have the answer, but to just say that I'm putting a human on it at the end to QC it, to say that that's enough, my viewpoint is that's not enough. And my challenge is to say, let's collaborate with those who are doing the machine translation post editing work to kind of to really get insight from them, to say, what is it that you need that's going to give you that sense of pride and ownership and agency, where you feel that you truly contributed to this project in a way that you can be proud of. And that's easier said than done. And I wish I had the answer, but it's, to answer your question, my thought on this, or my plea to the industry, is to say, let's work together to figure what that answer is. But we're not going to get there unless we're actually making an effort to open up those lines of communication. And that's sometimes the problem, or the first hurdle that we don't get over. We're not even talking. So if we can start by just having the conversation and listening to one another, we can figure something out. We can find some compromise, but we can't sit back. An AI company shouldn't sit back and say, well, I brought a human in at the end to do a QC, so it's it's okay. I've been taking away a job.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that simple.
Mm.
Yeah, and it doesn't really quite work like that, at least at this point. I mean, we're one of the lucky ones, because AI is fairly decent at translating a manual for a vacuum cleaner or something at this point. I mean, it can get super accurate, but when you have the creative aspect and you have the nuance, and also you don't want everything. I mean, there was this, was he a CEO or quite high up, some guy who was talking about consistency. AI, MTP is going to bring consistency to the table. And I'm sitting there thinking, is that a good thing? Like, do you want everyone to sound the same? Like every comedian every documentary narrator. Some things will get standardized, some things will get, thrown into the algorithm more often than others, and then everything is just gonna end up, sounding like a copy of a copy. Because you give a movie to 100 subtitlers working in the same language, and you're going to get 100 different translations, and everybody's going to have something to bring to the table. uh, so there's a lot to miss out and lose during this process as well. That's what we've been hearing from our members as well. Not to mention that most of the time it's just a cost cutting measure, to be honest with you, at this point, because it takes people even longer to do MTP. This is the consensus, like everybody's saying that it takes
Yeah.
people longer
Well,
to
if
do
we
it
if we can
compared to
if
doing
we
it from scratch.
if we can pause there, because I definitely want to touch on two things that you just said. So when it comes to consistency and how what AI can do in that realm, 100% I'm for it if it's consistency with key names and phrases and
Yes,
terms and
exactly.
glossaries and things like that. Like that only benefits everyone. In terms of tone and style, I agree with you. Like that's not a place where we want consistency in that way. And then when it comes to the machine translation post editing, this is where you guys can really educate me. Is I have heard kind of a mixed bag where I agree with you. Like mostly across the board, the consensus is mostly to say it's more work to go through and to do the post editing than if you just started from scratch. And I hear that with like challenging languages like Japanese, where it's challenging for an AI system to really, understand that language in the way that it has to be adapted. But there's languages like Latin Spanish that I don't know, maybe there's been more training on it. I don't know the reasons, but those models are giving you a better output to start with. And so is it easier to do a machine translation post edit on one language versus another? Because even on that post I put out there, Max, like I would get some people to say that they were okay with it depending on the language, and then other languages, like I said, Japanese and some others, are like, oh my gosh, it takes me more time. And so, where are we in terms of those different viewpoints within the
Yeah,
subtitle translation community?
absolutely. I mean, the low resource languages are gonna be worse. I know that. For Cherokee, for example, it would be horrendous, I'm sure. I remember some years ago, I worked on a Korean film through a template. So it was translated into English, and then I was translating from English into my language. And then the machine translation translated the word shit, as in just when it's said in one word, like in reference to something that, oh, shit. It was translated the same way every single time across 12 episodes of the show. And the thing is, in my language, you can use 100 different words for that, depending on what's going on, right? And if you're gonna use the same word, it just doesn't feel natural. It feels weird when you use the same word for it every single time. Well, that was years ago. But basically, that means that that AI would need to have access to the context, not only the sound, but also the image, what is going on, somehow explained through metadata. I don't know how that works. I haven't seen that for my language. But to tell you the truth, it seems like it's somewhat better for high resource languages, particularly for English, but it's still, my standards are very high. I am known as a person who has been working for years on a series of articles called Toward Intelligent Subtitling, where I really deep super dive into translation. So for me, when these nuances are erased, that is horrendous. By the way, Scott, I want to ask you something before, but we kind of pivoted to something else. I watched your podcast with someone else. I think it's something about voiceover, and you briefly mentioned that you used some super cool stuff on a Panda. What was it called?
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda 3. Yes. Some AI stuff, I think. No? Am I misunderstanding?
No, I don't believe so. I have actually not. No, I'm curious. Do you know which podcast that was?
I don't remember the name. I should
No,
have
it's all good.
remembered.
It's all good. The thing is, I have not put out anything that's been AI dubbed, translated at this point. Um, it's, I think some of that is also just a hesitation by, companies that are, I know I know there's a lot of factors for that, and I'm happy about that, because I'm not trying to rush into this new era. But no, I mean, for me, there's been nothing I put out there. I know, like, my parent company, all the major studios, they're all testing, they're all trying to figure out, like, what can this thing do across all sorts of different workflows. But I think the testing has showed everyone it's not ready for prime time, and it's taking longer and more expensive to do all the QC and the human in the loop involvement. And I use that word in quotes because it's from that post, the whole post was about we should stop using that term. But it's just not ready. It's not ready yet, and it's taking more work and more time, more money to put AI generated content out there at a level for stuff that you're going to watch episodic or feature.
I think I'm remembering now. I think it was not AI, it was remote dubbing, where people do things from home rather than from the studio.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, certainly there was a talk I gave, or an interview I did, where we talked about how we had to pivot during the pandemic. And I remember thinking at the time, only knowing this, traditional way of doing dubbing and going to a brick and mortar studio with all of the, all the soundproofing that you get with that, and all the security measures that you get by having things closed off and not on some cloud network. And I remember thinking during the pandemic, like, oh my gosh, we can't do this work and have people recording out of their closet and sending them all this material that they can access from their home. Like, there's no way this is going to work. And it did work. And the quality was fantastic. And people, some people have incredible home setups, as you know, when it comes to dubbing. And even those who had to really improvise and to get creative with how they soundproofed, or, going in a closet or hiding under the covers, like, they made it work. And I didn't see a dip in quality. We didn't have a single security breach, at least with the stuff I was working on, during the pandemic, when we were doing so much remote work. So I think for me, I don't know, maybe the lesson for me is, like, we can adapt. We can pivot in these ways. And, sometimes, I don't know, I don't want to say it means I'm open to AI in terms of taking things over, but I do recognize that, it's kind of like with the machine translation post editing. Like, I recognize it's going there, but I think we can also balance that with making sure that we're having conversations and listening, and making sure that we are bringing multiple people who are impacted to the table, to kind of develop what these workflows look like into the future.
Golden words. Bill actually has prepared for you a new meme about the mechanical Turk, if you know what that is.
No, this one I have seen, because you did share this one with me on another conversation we had. And so I never, at first, I was sitting there, like, very puzzled.
What is that?
And you guys had to explain to me. And then I went off and, like, researched it and tried to learn the story about this chess contraption. And yeah, no, like, now that I understand it, it's a brilliant meme.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to exactly what we're talking about here.
It works perfectly if you know all about it.
Yeah.
This is not how memes are supposed to work necessarily, but yeah. Again, it's a bit like having a tailor-made suit as opposed to something that's mass-produced and one size fits all and all that. It's the hot topic in our industry right now. Nobody really knows where it's gonna go eventually. But I had to tell you, like, most of our members were very skeptical. I mean, some people are super anti-AI. We're thinking, it's never gonna be good enough for any of that. I'm kind of in the middle personally, but it's important to be having these kinds of conversations for sure.
And I'd love to, I think that's that's a great. I'm going to turn this around now and ask you a question, and this is to both of you, which is, I do see that there's these three buckets. You have people that are like, I'm on board. I am moving forward with the technology. It is. I'm going to. I mean, they're fully embracing it. And you have the ones who are saying that no, it's the traditional ways are the only way, and I'm going to reject everything that AI touches. And then you have people that are kind of in that middle spot who maybe they're accepting that this is where it's going, and so at least if it's going this direction, they can be a part of those conversations that we're talking about, and maybe have some positive impact, opposed to just letting the corporations kind of run with it on their own. And so I don't know, like where. And Max, maybe that's a good question for you, as you're running an organization like Subtle, where you have so many different viewpoints of acceptance.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate that, and even with your own personal thoughts on it, like how do you those are hard waters to navigate, and I'm wondering how you do that.
That's a really good question, by the way. Putting him on the spot there.
Yeah, well,
You like how I pivoted to Max, Bill? I saved you.
it's very smart.
100%. It's all Max now.
So the thing is, people generally are not against new technology, as some people like to say. They're not. They are against companies using that technologies to improve their margins, which happens for different reasons. But we feel like we are at the end of a long chain of people, and whatever bullshit happens always trickles down to us, and there is nowhere further to trickle it down. It's
Yeah.
us who takes all that deterioration of working conditions. Um, I personally think that because I've been using ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude from the moment they appeared, for not translation, but for like personal things. And they have become incredibly powerful tools for all kinds of things. People often have a problem with the ethical aspect of how they were made by kind of stealing data en masse, which I think is the case. But it could be used for, if you don't worry about that much, it can be used for the good. For example, I used Gemini to create single-handedly. I'm not a programmer. I created a subtitling rates calculator, an app that we added to our website where people can enter how much they're paid per minute for subtitling or dubbing or anything. And it kind of compares that to the average and minimum salaries in their country per month,
That's amazing.
excluding sick leave, pension, tax, vacation days, so that you can compare it to how it would be for an employed person. And you put those numbers in and you realize that we're paid garbage, we're paid peanuts. It's really bad. Our rates need to be at least 50% more to be sustainable, but they're only going down or stagnate. So that's why people don't like AI. They feel like it's just an excuse for companies to continue delivering on their financial quarters or half years to the stakeholders, and then we get the
Short end of the stick.
exactly.
Yeah.
Bill, I think you had a question about EGA.
Right. Sorry. I think my battery just ran out on
I
my. Can you guys hear me?
I
We hear
can.
you.
Thankfully, I had a backup camera as well, albeit a low quality one.
It's fine.
Um, right. So the AGA one. Right. Yeah. We know you were involved. I think you were the chair or VP of the AGA at some point up until a few years ago.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
was
right,
a
Scott?
VP of EGA, and then chair of the awards committee, where we put on a localization awards show. And so I was the chair at the year where we were developing that show and rolling out the very first one.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, initially, our members were super excited when they first heard, finally we're getting localization awards. But then a lot of people were a bit disappointed that, due to the fact that individuals like translators, adapters, subtitlers, template makers, or transcript editors, or the people seem to kind of miss out. They feel like the companies got awards for great work, which is obviously fair and absolutely fine. But a lot of people were commenting on the fact that it's like the company did this on its own without relying on freelancers, and so
Yeah.
the people doing the creative work felt a bit left out basically. And I get that. I mean, I can imagine that having so many languages, so many categories, so many individuals, like who's gonna watch thousands and thousands of hours of localization and then decide who did the best job in general. I mean, you'll find a show that had great localization, and then you're just going to give the award to the company who did it. So it makes sense. But I think our members wanted to bring this up at some point, so that's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah,
we saw that we expected people to be named there, translators, and what was named there just the companies, not a single person.
yeah. So there's two things there. I think when I first rolled that rolled out that award show, and I never putting out the post to say this is a new award show. It's the first, really, it's the first global localization award show. I mean, there's a localization awards within individual countries, but there wasn't one that was truly global. That kind of, you could have a category. We can have a Japanese submission right next to a German, or Latin Spanish, or everything was kind of together. Which to your point, Bill, does make the the judging aspect of it harder, but because there's not going to be one person that's voting that knows all those languages. But that's a challenge that you can figure out. And I rolled out the announcement by putting out the categories to start, and I got a lot of pushback because we did not have any category for translations, for subtitlers. It was a huge miss. It was a huge oversight on my part. And I had people around me that were saying, don't engage. They're just going to come after you. Like, just don't even go there. And I did the opposite, where I engaged with every single person that posted to say, this is crazy. Why would you do this? You're ignoring the people. It's like, I heard it all. And I engaged with everyone. And I went further, not just engaging within the comment on the social media feed, but I booked coffee, meetings, and I held Zoom calls, and I wanted to really hear from those who were impacted by this. And it was an educational moment for me to realize, really impacts of that oversight. And it truly was an oversight. But it was a real egregious one. It's one I got wrong, and I took responsibility for it. And I made a point that moving forward, this award show has to have a award for translations, for subtitlers, for we have to find a way to work that in. It's never going to be perfect. And you, like I said, you do have this problem and this challenge of how do you get a voting pool and decide what's the best subtitle when you don't speak every one of those languages. But I had said, this is going to be the next iteration of the award show. My term ended at the EGA. I also was going to school to get my master's degree. And so I could not be a part of the association anymore. I kind of passed the baton off and on the awards committee work to the next team. And I had said to them when I left, like, this is the one thing, this is your priority. This is the one thing you have to do, is to find a way to work. I don't care if it starts with just a lifetime achievement award for a subtitler, but somehow, some way, get a category in there that honors the work of translations. The next award show came out. The next award show came out, 0 translation categories.
We noticed.
and I remember calling the guy that was the chair at the time and saying, what the F, it's like, this is like, I had literally left all these conversations, all these Zoom calls, all these coffee chats, telling these incredible subtitlers, like, I've got your back. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make this right. And then the next award show, when I wasn't there, came out, and for a host of excuses, it didn't happen. I decided I was not, but they did say that there was something they were working towards. They just couldn't solve that problem you're describing, Bill. They couldn't get around that. I still think you could have done something like a Lifetime Achievement Award, or you could have had at least one category. You could have had a way to at least make sure they're a part of the larger program. But for a host of reasons, it didn't happen. Long story short, I decided I'm not going to submit my own work until that award show has a subtitle category. So I sat out the next year. I didn't submit anything. I don't think me boycotting by not submitting anything, I don't think it moved the needle. I don't even know if anyone noticed. I wasn't out there saying, this is something I'm doing. I'm not trying to stir the pot. I mean, I think they truly were doing good work by putting this out there, by honoring localization in a global way with an award show. But I definitely was not going to submit something from DreamWorks until they did right that ship. And
Wow.
and the next year they did. And so there are subtitling translation categories in. I hope we still expand. I hope they still keep developing that further, but we're in a better place now than we were when I first rolled it out. To your other point, Bill, and I think this is important to speak to, the next problem I have is, I saw all these great posts with like the subtitlers holding up their award, and it didn't have their name on it. It had the company
Yeah.
that was honored, and it was all about the company, not the subtitler, not the adapter, not the translator. And I think that's the next, I don't want to call it fight, because that sounds like too strong a word, but that's the next thing to push for. And on one hand, I get it. It's the company that is paying the submission fees. Like they're submitting they're submitting the applications, all of that. But they need that award needs to have the name of the person that you are recognizing, not the company that hired the person that did the work. So that is my personal view. And I'm hoping that could be the next iteration of improving upon where we started.
Let's hope for that. And thanks so much for pushing it in that direction.
Yeah, I think I speak for both of us when I say I had no idea you were so attuned and aware of how this went down. And personally, I appreciate it. I feel like you fought our fight for us in a sense. I did get to make a pretty funny meme out of it when that happened. I'm
Oh
gonna
boy.
just post it here real quick. It's bad luck, Brian. I'm sure you're familiar.
Yep, that's about right.
That's how it
But
works.
I have to tell you, our members, at least the ones who are gonna watch this, are gonna love you for all of that stuff you just said.
Look,
100%.
the thing is, I got it wrong, and I was also willing to hear all the ways in which I got it wrong, and work to make it right. And I think I have had, honestly, Max, we got connected through because I did that work, because one of the people I went and had a coffee chat with, they're like, oh, the person you need to talk to is Max and the Subtle agency. Like you've got to reach out to them. And so I have gotten some of the most incredible connections throughout my my network and through like LinkedIn and my own kind of education, getting to this point where I'm in today, where I'm at today, all because I just was willing, I listened, and I hope we all do more of that. It's also like that, you talked about that machine translation post editing post that I put out on LinkedIn. I had a lot of people even with that telling me like, don't step into those waters, And
I'm
but I'm
sure.
like, but again, like that's kind of become my new philosophy, which is that's the problem. We're so afraid of having hard conversations that we just avoid it. And I'm hoping maybe that I know, like I'm not some social media influencer. I'm one person. I don't think of myself as you know um, changing anything industry wide, but I want to at least be one person who can maybe show an example of willing to kind of have those hard conversations and hearing things where we do make mistakes and understanding what we need to do to get things right. um I never win. If I could say one more thing on this, because
Yep.
it speaks to this last meme you put up. I reached out to the company who won the first subtitling award because it was something I advocated for so long, and I said to them, will you send me a picture of the translator holding his award, because I want to put that out on social media to say we got there. This is what I was advocating for, and so many were advocating for, and I wanted to celebrate it on at least within my small network on LinkedIn. I never put out the post because I got the picture back, and it's the translator. He's holding a statue. He's pointing to it. You see that pride. It's everything I wanted, and he's pointing to the vendor's name, and it spoke to exactly what this meme is saying. And I just like I didn't know how to put that out there. I didn't know how to speak to that because I felt like I wanted that post to be about that translator, and that picture, just the nature of, because the fact the award says what it says, was going to make the conversation a whole separate conversation. And again, I'm not afraid to have that conversation, but I wanted that moment to be about the translator. And unfortunately, I there was no way to kind of split those hairs. So yeah, I'm hoping we can. I'm glad you guys brought that up. I'm glad people are talking about that. I hope that there is pressure, um, good pressure, responsible pressure on the AGA to um, to make that change.
Yeah, we'll continue on that.
And to be fair, I mean, you have to start somewhere. So, starting with the companies, expanding the awards to individual translators. And I mean, I get that. You do need to start somewhere. We've been talking about sort of doing something similar ourselves. But again, like like you said, it's not easy to. We have all these different languages and so much
Yeah.
content. So we were talking about it. I mean, how would we go about it? And it turns out it's not as simple as just put out some awards and just give it to whoever. But again, thank you for explaining the situation. I'm sure all of our members will love you for this, and
Yeah,
hopefully we'll get it done at some point.
we'll figure it out.
We're here to help out if
And I
you know.
and I hope you remember, like, I try my best to engage as much as I can, especially on LinkedIn. That is where you can reach me. I can't, I'm not always good about responding to every message, but there are some where, like, if you reach out to me and you want to have like a coffee chat or you want to have a Zoom call, like, I want to hear from people. Like, I'm better at my job when I hear from the people that are truly impacted by decisions that happen at the top. And like you said, like, subtitling has historically been where the group that's been squeezed the most. And I think, as hard as that is, like, people in any kind of leadership position in this industry need to not shy away from that. Like, I think it's really easy to kind of cover our ears, but I want to hear from people because I need to understand the impacts, not just of so many workflows across the localization world. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say, and where I'm trying to leave this, is to say that um, I am open and I want to hear from people, and I need to hear what's working and what's not working, because that's the only way we're going, especially as we get into AI, that's the only way we are going to make any kind of positive impact moving forward.
Well, The way you put it sounds like we are ending the podcast. It's a perfect ending. However, we have one more question that we just want to know. Uh, so we'll have to pivot to it. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that you sometimes get to work with famous people, producers, directors, maybe voice actors or actors who do voice acting. Is that right?
Certainly the filmmakers, not necessarily the domestic talent per se. But yes, keep going because
Yes.
yeah.
So, what is then your feeling regarding them? Do they care about translation ever, about languages, about how their film will be perceived overseas? Is that a conversation?
Okay, you definitely did not end the podcast. We are going. We're opening up a whole nother topic, and it's. I'm really glad you asked this question because it's something in terms of things that I try to advocate for that I think are important, and I hope other people think they're important too. Is the education of filmmakers.
Hmm.
The problem with, and I'm using localization very generally. I mean, I'm trying to capture dubbing, subtitling, everything. But the problem with localization from the start has been that it's been considered post production. The
Yeah.
fact that it got categorized as post production has been a huge problem from the start of this industry because it's not post, but it's also not production. And it's like this bridge between the two. But because we put it in this post production category, it's almost like an afterthought. It's an asset. It's a box you check to say I need this language or this dub or this subtitle, and it's not this thing that you think of in the same way when you're making the production in the original language. And so I always tell filmmakers, like, you need to understand this process and how scripts are adapted, how your jokes that are hysterical and work really great for an American audience, they don't adapt. They don't work in another language. We have to change the context. We have to change them entirely. I always tell filmmakers, you have to hold on a second. I have a cough and you can probably edit this out, but bear with me one.
We will keep it for humorous reasons. There is no way we cut it out.
Oh my gosh, you have to cut that. Hopefully my mute button worked.
It did.
I'm getting I'm getting over a cold, so I'm trying to do this while I have this like horrible head cold. Forgive me. Um, what I always tell filmmakers is if you knew how much we were changing your film, you would care a lot more. And I don't, I think it speaks to, and you brought this up earlier, Max, as well. It speaks to this problem that we see, which is people think that you translate something and it gets translated one way, or maybe it was you that said this, Bill. Like, but if you give that same line to 100 different translators, you're going to get 100 different ways that that line is adapted. And I think filmmakers need to understand the subjectivity and how creative this process is. And it's not just a box that you check in some post-production, you know, workflow that you need at the very end that needs to be delivered. It is something that is a production in and of itself. And I get it. It's not post, it's not production, it's this bridge in between. But because we've categorized it in this one way, people just think of it as this afterthought. And I try to do a lot internally at DreamWorks to educate filmmakers to say, you need to understand what goes into actually adapting a joke or a line or a scene or a character, even down to how a character is translated for a particular market. And I think we've made some headway, but I think we need more of that across the industry to really educate filmmakers to care. I want them to care. Some people say in this dubbing world, I don't need another cook in the kitchen. I don't want the filmmakers coming in and like bringing in their thoughts, and they don't even know the language. But there, of course, is going to be a line. But I do welcome that input, and I want them to care as much about the version they made as the dubs that we have to also deliver alongside it. And I think if we can fix that part of our industry in terms of educating filmmakers, I think localization as a whole will be lifted up.
That would be the dream. We've actually been talking about the exact same thing in the last couple of days. Think about who our allies can be in the industry. It's the actual creatives. It's not necessarily going to be, some budget C-suite guy who only deals in, with business decision making. It's gonna be the creatives. Like, you spend 5 years on the script, you put your heart and soul into it. Do you really want to see it butchered by some unsupervised cheap-ass AI solution? Really? I mean, I'm pretty sure people are gonna be annoyed, and people, like you said, like most of the time, they're just not aware. Especially if it's we're talking about, not particularly. Um, it's also like a US centric thing a little bit. I think Anglo-centric, possibly. It's not an afterthought if every single thing you've grew up watching was dubbed or translated. Like me growing up in Greece, everything was translated. This is how I basically learned English, by watching subtitles and listening to the audio as well at the same time. So it's kind of the I know. I kind of lost my track of thought there, but
No
you know, you
problem.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think directors could be our allies if we talk to them, editors,
Yes.
but also surprisingly, sound teams, sound editors, sound mixers, and supervising sound editors and sound designers. And I actually interviewed one famous film sound designer working in Hollywood, Mark Mangini, who worked on, Dune, Blade Runner, and so on, the new version. And basically, I don't know, Scott, how much you know about closed captioning, where they include sound descriptions for deaf people. But basically, my idea is that subcaptioners are sort of sound designers for deaf people because these sound descriptions, they're not just for the sound, they're for the creative intent behind the sound. So what are you trying to say with that sound? You will choose specific words to convey that idea to the intended audience, to hard of hearing and deaf people. And Mark was really into it. He was really kind of like, oh, hold on a minute, I never thought about it that way, but you're right. And also he told me that sound teams feel very similar to subtitlers, that they are an afterthought. Quite often directors don't really think, they think that sound is something that will just somehow work magically and kind of,
At a press of a button.
yeah,
Yeah.
it will figure, they all figure it. Same with subtitling and dubbing, it's gonna work somehow. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think that educational component is that's the focus. That if you really want to see change, we've got to educate people at every level of the production pipeline to why this work matters. And the sound descriptions. I keep thinking about oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but there's an incredible translator who's been doing like the Squid Games captions, where it's like the squelching footsteps,
yeah,
like that. Like I love that. I mean, it's just like the description that
Stranger
goes into
Things.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not Squid Game, Stranger Things. Forgive me.
Stranger
That's
Things.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's I don't know, like that. Those kind of examples are such a great way to kind of break through to say this is why it matters.
Yeah. But we're kind of all out of questions. Maybe Bill, you have something else to add?
I have memes, but I think Scott might be all memed out by now.
All right,
I'll get you. Give me one more. Give me one more.
All
something.
right, I got a good one, I think. It's one of the first ones I made. It's actually a GIF or a GIF. Um,
One of those.
yeah, it's a mega meme. So it only takes like 20 seconds, but can you view it?
Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
We're gonna put all that up on post, ideally,
All right. Hold on a second.
so
Let
people
me.
know what we're
It's.
talking about.
Let me get my glasses going here. Hold on one second, because it's really small on my screen. Yep, that summarizes it. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
All right then. We're kind of done.
thanks.
Maybe if you have any final thoughts, Scott, or something that you would like to say to the world of freelance subtitlers and dubbing adapters and everyone, what would you say?
I think push push for conversations. at any level, any kind of conversation we're having is getting us to getting us to a place where, I don't know, it's going to get us, I think it's going to take steps in the right direction, and just across the industry, across every workflow. I think we're so afraid to have those tough conversations. I mean, it's the reason I'm doing things like this. It's the reason, you and I have collaborated on other projects, Max. It's because, this is truly where we make change. And I think we sometimes feel like we are powerless, but whether it's having conversations, making sure that both sides understand each other and what these workflows are and how they impact us, or it's simply taking a angle of trying to just educate filmmakers to why they should care, reach out. We have incredible ways of connecting these days, especially through social media. And sometimes you can get that conversation, or you can get that meeting by just asking. And sometimes we're afraid to just even ask the question, but reach out. Yeah, I always tell people when they're trying to make it in this industry that, especially when it comes to people in Los Angeles, you got to remember something about people in LA. They love to talk about themselves. So lean into that. If you reach out to someone, not in a way that's threatening, or not in a way where you're asking for a job or you're asking for something in return, but just to say, hey, I'd love to learn about your career and where you've gotten to where you're at, or what motivates you, or what drives you, you'll be amazed at how many doors will open to say, like, yeah, I'll take that call. I'll take that Zoom meeting. And when you approach it in that way, again, I think it's the first step in just engaging and starting the dialogue. And so I think all of us at every level, whether we're, from top of a studio, or from a localization vendor, or from a dubbing studio, or a translator, or an AI company, I don't care where you're at. Like, we all need to be engaging in conversation and in dialogue. And that's my big takeaway.
Well, thank you so much for these golden words. And I guess this concludes the first inaugural episode of Locked Ones. Thank you so much for coming, for joining us today, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. It's been a joy, really.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Hopefully we can get you back at some point if we're still around.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It was fun. It was fun. Anytime I can talk shop, I love it. So thank you, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Have a great day.